We're going to talk about mobile apps as one of the creative sectors. And I'm going to address or try to address three questions in my brief remarks. And the first one is why is intellectual property so important for the creative industries and for the creative sector? What kind of evidence do we have, and what are some of the trends and issues that we need to be aware of in that respect? The second question that I'd like to address is to talk about mobile apps as part of this creative industries ecosystem. How does it fit into it? What are some of its specifics that may be relevant to our discussions along the topics of the program? And the third topic I would like to address is a policy topic. Why do we need to have a strategic approach to this sector? And does it deserve one? And what could be potentially the elements of such a strategic approach towards the mobile apps as a creative sector? So a few words about the creative economy. You've been hearing this a lot. It has become a buzzword today. And I can tell you there's no definition of the creative economy, no international definition. But most broadly, when we talk about that, we refer to this whole broad network of relationships in the knowledge society: creative people, creative industries, creative cities, creative infrastructure. Usually we refer to all of that when we talk about the creative economy. And it is widely considered that the fuel of this century is going to be creativity, and we need to monetize creativity to make a better living. Creative industries has also become a buzzword because it symbolizes this most dynamic area of development in terms of economic development. This is where growth is. The highest percentages of growth are in the creative sector. So you are pretty much in the center around the average. You look at the employment, even higher, 5.35% of the employment comes from the creative sector. So this is a major generator of jobs, which is very important for each government. And you will see that, for example, in terms of jobs, we have developing countries which are topping the list, such as Philippines or Mexico, which is not very far from here. So Mexico, 14% of the employment comes from the creative sector. People are employed in this sector, which means that it has a major impact on the social development of the country. Now, how are the creative industries and the performance of the creative industries related to other economic indicators? We looked at various indicators, and we established that there is a positive correlation between the performance of the creative sector and such indicators as the GDP per capita, as your positioning in terms of the global innovation, as measured by the Global Innovation Index, competitiveness, as measured by the Global Competitiveness Index, business freedom, in other words, how easy it is to do business in a country, and finally, even freedom from corruption. So all of these were in a positive relationship with the performance of the creative industries in terms of GDP contribution. In other words, when the performance of the creative sector goes up, usually these indicators go up in the same direction. Now, if you look at the various creative sectors, and today we're going to focus on mobile applications, the studies show that those 9 sectors which we consider core, in other words, they depend very much on copyright protection, and you'll see that the highest contributor is still the publishing industry. It is still the biggest industry. That includes, of course, the printing, journalists, etc., but publishing is still the biggest one with 39% of the core group.
So for the benefit of our guest speakers and anyone else here who is not familiar with how Carnival operates in Trinidad and Tobago, you know, we all talk about the road, and the road means, of course, that you get all dressed up in your costumes, you meet your band, and then you spend 2 days up and down all over the town, on the road, dancing, partying, palancing, having lunch, having breakfast, stopping at different places. That's how it goes. It's constant motion, it's very dynamic. There's so many bands, from Juve bands to day mass, night mass in some parts of Trinidad. And Carnival takes place all over Trinidad and Tobago, unlike in some other countries. It's not just in the capital city. We have it in San Fernando. We have it in local communities all over the country. And it's constant motion. For most of us, it may seem like aimless motion, right? We're always moving. Sometimes, majority of the time, people don't even know where they're at if you had to tell somebody where you are. And it's loud. So what that means is if you're trying to meet your band or meet your friends or watch mass, and you try to call someone, they may not even hear you. You may not hear them. And depending on the time of day and how much people have indulged, they may not know exactly where they are. So for women, you know, we dress in some very impractical outfits during Carnival time and impractical shoes, and we're trekking all over the town, and in the hot sun. And it's a production, the hair, the makeup, the outfits, everything, and it's not the most fun to be walking up and down looking for your band, sometimes for more than an hour. And then we have these characters who like to send us in all the wrong places. So there's also that element. And of course, we know we have safety and security concerns in this country and many others that have carnivals. And it's not the easiest thing to consider walking around a city, especially if you're a tourist. And a tourist not just from abroad, but maybe from another part of Trinidad and Tobago who may not know the cities very well. So what happened, the practicality of it, and you know, most businesses that arise, and most apps that are built come out of a personal experience. And this was about 5 years ago. I am not a huge carnival participant. Of course, I grew up around it. So I decided to come meet some friends in town. They were in a couple different bands. And some friends and cousins of mine, a bunch of girls, we were just looking for our friends. And by the time somebody said they were on that street corner, and we walked down there, the band had gone somewhere else. And then by the time we walked across to the other place, this is what we did for almost 2 hours in the sun. And then it started getting a little bit darker, and everybody got a little anxious. And I remember standing on a street corner, literally a junction, and saying to my cousin or my friend, whoever was next to me, hey, just check your app store and see if there's an app. And she just looked at me like I was completely mad. And she's like, no, there's no such thing. And I said, look, you see this madness? I'm going to build one. And she was like, okay, great. The hot sun in your head, great. Let's go. And we went about our business. It was very inconvenient. And apart from that, you know, I started looking at the whole landscape of Carnival. You know, life is a party here at Carnival time. There are hundreds of parties all over the country. So many parties, so many Carnival calendars, and so many different places online and printed out, and all these different things are happening in different venues across the country. There are things going on year-round. We like to dress up, we like to see ourselves in the pictures. So all of these things I started thinking about when we looked at the different features, and you would see the 4 main buttons on there, which I'll get into a little bit later. So yes, it was a good idea. I just sat on that for a little while and I forgot about it, and then Carnival started coming around again and I started thinking about it more and more. And like most good ideas, they can just remain a good idea and a dream that you forget about until somebody else does it and you're like, ugh, I wish I had followed through on it. Or you can really put some time and effort into it. And the more I thought about it, it became something that I was passionate about and motivated to do. I'd spent some time prior to that working in the creative sector, and I understood, just like our speaker earlier, Dr. Ganchev, talked about the value of the global creative sector. In Trinidad and Tobago, Carnival is our greatest export. It is our greatest tourism product, well, apart from oil and gas, right? But it is something that we pride ourselves on. It is something that is copied and mimicked all over the world. It is something that we basically created our own version of, because you can go to carnivals all over the world and they have different flavors and different experiences. But more and more, especially where our diaspora has grown and developed, you see that Trinidad style and flavor of a participatory carnival, not a spectator type carnival. And yet, businesses in the sector, I found as I started exploring a little more and more, were operating primarily offline, meaning that apart from social media, and this is about 5 years ago, which was, you know, primarily a Facebook page and so on. A couple of them had some e-commerce sites just to buy and sell costumes and accessories. But there was very little use of technology beyond that.
The ins and outs of protectability, not of mobile apps as a whole. Mobile app is a product, and it's a multi-layered product. And what I will try to touch upon today is the protectability of the different aspects of that product. And I divided it really to two, let's call it two classes or families of aspects. One is what you may call, so when you have a mobile app, what you may call the parts or elements that lie below the surface. That is the code, architecture, algorithm, and so on. Algorithms, data formats, all of those things. And the other, which would be the next session, deals with the stuff that we, as users, not as developers, as users, experience. So that is the graphical user interface and the functionality as a whole. In different types of intellectual property rights protect in a different way different aspects of these rights. And yesterday I was kind of alluding to that by saying that you cannot look at, or you should not look at a complex product such as a mobile app, complex from a legal perspective, and think just copyright or just patents or focus your attention on one intellectual property right. It's a tapestry of rights that you should have in mind, and you should approach the issue with a holistic approach in mind, as in which type of rights can protect which type of aspects of my product. And you should also accept, as we shall see, that certain aspects, and sometimes you may think that these are the most valuable aspects of your mobile app, may remain unprotected. Now, this is a disadvantage when you are the original developer. This is an advantage to some extent when you are a second comer and you see something that a competitor does and you think, well, I can do that, I can do it better, and you wish to borrow. Production of software. Various models and methodologies for development, for software development. You have a few listed here. These are just a few, the more generic ones. You have sometimes hybrids of these. And the selection of a particular methodology, those of you who are in this line of work know, has a significant effect on various aspects on of your mobile app, testing, time frame for completion, and so on. However, by and large, it is fairly irrelevant as far as intellectual property law is concerned. It has little aspect, except for one thing that I will highlight, on the legal position in relation to the software, and the legal position of that piece of software that was created in relation to intellectual property rights. When it comes to mobile apps, as I said, models can often be regarded as irrelevant. And as we know, and I was actually having a conversation with someone yesterday, where is it? There are today mobile app development tools. Some of them are considered to be no-code or low-code development tools. You actually don't need to be, depending on the mobile app in question, you don't necessarily have to be a coder in order to create one. What does that mean as far as intellectual property law is concerned? It means that such tools may enable you indeed to develop a mobile app in a very short time and involve very little coding in the process. But from an intellectual property law perspective, you have to bear in mind that the use of such tool may affect claims to copyright ownership over certain portions of code and architecture that resulted from the use of such tools. Again, this can and should be decided on an ad hoc basis. It should definitely not be regarded as a negative. So if that's the type of methodology and modality that makes more sense to you in order to develop your app, go ahead and pursue it. The originality or uniqueness of your app is very likely, if there is one, not to reside in the actual code itself, and therefore it is of less relevance. And the source of the software, as I was saying before, can either be you, so you coded afresh, or you borrowed pieces of code from various sources. And this is where things should be considered should be handled with care.
That is some of the key contractual issues that arise when negotiating a contract from the perspective of both the app developer as well as the end user of a mobile app agreement. There can be a number of legal and contractual commercial issues that come up when negotiating contracts of this nature. You can have one where if you're the app developer, you're developing the application, you might be entering an agreement with someone who's providing or a platform provider, or you may find yourself in a situation where you're creating one for a bespoke type application for a company or, for a particular purpose. Or you can have, like we're saying, end user agreements which deal with licensing and use of the mobile app software. And another element of this that I think we should always think about is NDAs. I think they were mentioned before, the non-disclosure agreement. I don't think we should underscore the importance of, if you've developed some sort of technology, a mobile app, or something that is new and innovative, that if you're going around showing it to other parties, showing it to third parties to see whether or not they're going to engage with you, that having a confidentiality agreement up front so that it's clear that your technology is just being viewed for the purposes of discussion, for example, is important. Intellectual property, I think, is a key factor in the growth and development of the mobile app sector. I mean, we've seen recently this morning, how involved it is. And businesses today, in large part, are using mobile apps more and more. So it is really becoming a very critical aspect to our sector, to sell products, to communicate with clients. And so the commercial value of developing mobile apps, I think, is important, and particularly in Trinidad and Tobago, because I think it's a burgeoning area that's developing at a fairly fast rate here. What may be an issue is whether or not we have the laws or the know-how to support the pace at which the sector is developing. I read a statistic that according to the 2013 Digital Divide Survey, which was done by TAT, it noted that there was a boost of 140% mobile penetration rate in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, I think we're all, as Trinbagonians, can appreciate that a lot of people have two phones, or they have both Digicel and B-Mobile, or they have the latest. So it's a really ready and handy media for this kind of growth. For the development of a mobile app, I think outside of the technical development, which I'm sure you are learning about across these 2 days, the costs and resources that are associated with creation can be challenging if you're, when entering into the market. So for the app developer who's just starting out, and sometimes persons are self-taught, sometimes they're working for a company, these are some of the issues that you need to take into account, I think, in looking at the commercialization aspect of your technology. It can be expensive, and sourcing investors can also, or financing can also be an issue, or at least not always a walk in the park. And then you have to think about the market as well, where
where the technology is going to be used, where the mobile apps are going to be. I mean, I know that's international, but all of these are, I think, issues that come into play. So I want to just move on. I wanted to start at a point of looking at the intellectual property rights. I know we've just gone through, Dr. Shamtov's gone through them in quite detail, but I think I will just go through them just briefly so that you get a sense of what are the actual laws in Trinidad that exist, which mirror in large part what we've just heard, but I will just go through them quite quickly. So we do have copyright. It's good to know that we have copyright protection here because that's a key element for mobile app protection. Our Copyright Act does provide protection for software, as it were, and there's a definition, or it can be interpreted as a meaning of a computer program where it's a set of instructions expressed in words, code, schemes, or in any other form, which is capable, when incorporated in a medium that the computer can read, of causing a computer to perform or achieve a particular task or result. That's a very long-winded legalese type statement. But suffice it to say, there is protection in our Copyright Act for computer programs and for software. So that is the important takeaway. As we heard before, it does arise automatically. It's a registration. There's no registration required, which is a good thing because it means once you're able to have a tangible expression of the ideas that you're trying to put together, it exists, but that's equally the difficulty because proving that and demonstrating it in an issue where there might be some, copyright infringement arises, or you're trying to challenge someone who's done a similar thing, poses some difficulties there. And we heard earlier what some of those would involve.